Welcome to this virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI, focusing on European hospitality and the new normal. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content and Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is kindly sponsored by the equipment manufacturer Meiko and will address the far-reaching ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic on the European food service and hospitality sector, just at the very point that restrictions across much of Europe are in the first stages of being lifted. I'm delighted to be joined today by our expert panellists, a consultant, an operator, an equipment manufacturer and an analyst. I'll ask each of them in turn to just introduce themselves and also to tell us a little bit about how their business has been affected by the pandemic and also the business of their clients. We are going to start first with Bettina. Ladies first, if you could just tell us a bit about what you do and also your sort of personal reaction and how your business has been affected.
Thank you very much, Mike. My name is Bettina. I'm a consultant for the hospitality industry, living in Munich, operating almost all over Europe. And obviously, all my clients are affected a lot. I think it has two different levels. The one is the operational, going through the figures, making sure how they could survive, if they can survive. And the other level, to give them really a lot of empowerment in terms of the psychology part of it, being positive, looking forward to the future, building up the strength to restructure their own businesses.
Yeah, so I'm Stuart Procter, COO of the Stafford Collection. We have the Stafford Hotel here in St James's, London, 5-star luxury hotel. Northcote in Lancashire, which has a Michelin star and has had one for 25 years. And Norma, our new Italian restaurant that we launched in Fitzrovia in September. As soon as the government informed the public that they shouldn't go to restaurants and hotels, not stop going to restaurants and hotels, that was a real issue. So our sector, hotels and restaurants, has had it very hard because we were operating with minimal clients coming through the doors. And then, of course, 85% of our London hotel business comes from the air. So we need the airlines to travel. So overnight, obviously, both hotels are closed. We've gone from having a record year last year in the history of the Stafford, and it was opened in 1912, to nothing. So catastrophic, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Stuart. And Paul, over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul. I'm Managing Director of Meiko UK, Meiko Worldwide Group. Clearly, like others, 80% of our business is the hospitality trade. So to be advised not to use a pub restaurant at the beginning was quite detrimental to our business, and we are about 80% of business down, effectively. We are lucky enough that a percentage of our business is also frontline care, NHS and hospitals, so we have that side of our business going well, but I do have to say it is almost as though someone's just turned it off. Yeah, like many others, equipment manufacturers, dealers, it is a very, very quiet time. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And Mark.
Yes, hello everybody. Mark Dempsey, Global Consulting Director with GlobalData. So my role is really to support Tier 1 manufacturers, retailers, and of course operators in the food service industry, specifically with helping to define their strategies for growth. For example, planning around innovation, planning around business strategy, go-to-market ideas, identifying and leveraging today's big themes and trends from around the world. But today, in the last few months and likely for the foreseeable future, the number one role I can play as a consulting partner with our biggest clients is to help them prioritize and identify exactly the right way forward. What are the biggest needs? How do they adapt into this new normal that we're all talking about? How will their consumers and users be prioritizing and changing their lifestyles?
Thank you, Mark. And you very kindly offered to give us a broad Europe-wide overview of the status of the hospitality industry in those countries, perhaps with the largest economies. Can you just spend a couple of minutes just telling us where those countries are in terms of the lockdown, which countries have begun easing restrictions and reopening hospitality, and to what effect that's having?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. I'll start relatively broad and big picture, but I have identified 2 or 3 very specific countries I think might be of interest just from changes in the last week or 10 days. So across Europe, partial easing of lockdown restrictions is most notably seen in this last week in Spain, Italy, and the UK. 3 of the top 5 global countries, in fact, for COVID-19 deaths. So it's too early to say today if that's an easing of restrictions too quickly or if they may need reversing. But certainly it suggests progress is being seen, and some benefit may shortly be seen into the food service and hospitality universe. Now, GlobalData's weekly COVID-19 tracker shows currently, as of a few days ago, 4.2 million cases and 292,000 deaths. Economic stimulus packages across Europe's leading countries remain the key focus for supporting communities and industries across Europe. The ongoing closure, effectively, of food service and hospitality suggests it's unlikely that our industry will be benefiting from those stimulus packages in the short term. One sobering thought is the recent statement from the IMF that the global economy is likely to shrink by 3% in 2020. And indeed, the UK may be one of the worst hit, certainly above average, with a shrinking of about 6.5% in 2020, which would be the worst since the Great Depression, according to the IMF. A few detailed comments about some countries. Spain has made some of the most recent and most interesting to us developments in terms of the food service industry and the hospitality industry. So despite borders and even cross-province travel within Spain remaining very restricted, hotels are now beginning to open on a very small basis and on a room-only basis, as long as they have applied and adhered to strict cleaning principles. Within Spain, legislation for use of the rooms will even change. So such elements as minibars, coffee machines, it seems they will be removed from rooms to remove touch points and to remove the need for those to be cleaned and the risk of contamination between guest to guest. So severely reduced customer contact will be a theme within the hotel industry and the hospitality industry. Reduced contact at check-in and check-out will be the standard in Spain for reopening of hotels, and we can certainly expect that to be the standard across Europe. So that suggests one of the biggest impacts for the hotel hospitality industry is the need to identify new ways to create a great welcoming experience. Just a couple of other very quick notes. In France, Airbnb have recently identified a real spike in guests researching how to holiday close to home. So rather than giving up the idea of a holiday completely, certainly this idea of reducing cost, reducing miles, reducing human contact by utilizing Airbnb for a local stay seems to be gaining some weight as potentially a let's say a balance or a compromise to keep a holiday in the diary but much closer to home. One hypothesis I would raise there is that if we see holidaymakers sticking close to home using Airbnb to avoid human contact, avoid miles, avoid cost, potentially there will be a knock-on effect where they avoid restaurants and food service in the locations of the holidays, choosing rather to cater for themselves at home in the Airbnb. Of course, great for the retail recovery, but not so great for the likely recovery of food service. And just finally, a couple of points about Spain and Germany. Cafes and bars start to reopen, but with quite some legislation. Predominantly outdoor seating, reduced capacity, certainly, which makes some sense. No cash payments, contactless payments only, which makes some sense. And one thing which is happening seemingly in Germany, the need to leave behind personal details at the cafe or the bar in case it's then proven later that there has been a spike or an outbreak from that establishment. And the tracking of people who had been there recently will be prioritized and used to benefit the whole community. So some real change to be seen in what we can start to call the new normal as we head into 2020. And Michael, I'll pass back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. Bringing in Bettina, Stuart, and Paul there. Some of the statistics and some of the facts are really quite stark. Other numbers that I've heard: perhaps a third of restaurants that are currently not open at the moment will never reopen. Predictions of 2 million job losses in the UK within a year in this sector. It's a very emotive issue, of course. There's some very high-profile operators and investors, people like Jonathan Downey and Luke Johnson here in the UK, stressing that this is, as Stuart said earlier, this is catastrophic. It's devastating to the sector. How do you see the immediate future of food service in your particular part of the sector and your particular part of the world? Stuart, can we go to you first for that, please?
Yeah, so I think we at the Stafford, we have got beautiful outdoor space, the American bar. Myself and my colleagues in the fine dining end of the spectrum, because of the service that we offer and the high level, we just have to adapt our touch points, as Mark rightly said. The less human contacts, so the waiter wouldn't be all over your table, the wine service. But I seriously think that for the high-end sector, because of the service that we offer and the facilities that we have, will be in a better place than the middle market, a high volume, cafe bar type operation. So at the Stafford, I'm not saying we're going to go back to 2019, not at all. But I think if you read the reviews and the surveys, I think we will be 60% where we were because of the space. In the north of England, Northcote, again, we've got a beautiful big kitchen. Lisa Allen's got a fabulous chef's table. We do cookery schools, so we can offer different cookery classes, barbecue lessons outside. So we have to be flexible. Norma, whole different proposition. We're going to do click and collect. We're going to do Norma Deliveroo. We're going to do Bentish at home. We've got to adapt.
Bettina, looking at your clients, your restaurant clients in particular, how do you feel about the kind of? I think obviously Germany has started easing the social restriction. What's your kind of immediate take on the future of hospitality in Germany?
I think the situation is pretty similar to the UK. We don't know what's going to happen. We opened in Bavaria yesterday with the outdoor seating. So we had queues all over Munich because people wanted to go to the beer gardens. And it took ages, of course, because they had to leave their personal details. And also there wasn't enough space because we have limited tables only. So it is quite a hassle. And but still, I'm never giving up my optimism. So I really hope that most of it will gonna make it, but it's unreal. It's going to be about 30 to 40% who's going to fail. And we will have in Germany 1 million people without jobs, only in that sector. So it is unreal. It's really devastating.
Thank you, Bettina. Paul, what's your take on it?
I think the other comments are totally valid. From our side, I mean, we supply into these businesses of all different shapes and sizes. I think people are going to be extremely cautious about what they buy if they're going to open up again. I think they may look at certification to prove that ultimately everything they buy does what it says on the tin. I read these things about restaurants considering disposable cutlery, disposable plates to make it a different type of operation. But when I spoke to my wife about that, she said, if I want to go out for a meal, I want to eat off a plate. I want to use a knife and fork. I want to drink from a clean glass. That's part of the experience. So somehow we've got to try and help businesses to sort of get back to what it was before. But it's, and certification might be it. Can it eradicate the coronavirus? I mean, we've spent a lot of work. We can do that. I think it's giving support to people, but I think Bettina's right. It's going to be massive losses. Some businesses will be able to adapt because they've got the thought process to do it and to try and adapt their business because they want to make it work, where others possibly, unfortunately, might not know how to do that. So, Stuart's got some ideas. You've got to be one step ahead. I mean, they all keep saying it's new normal. I know it's very frustrating for people, new normal, we're going to go back to normal, but it won't be normal. It won't be as it was because people are scared. You don't want this. You don't want it to happen again. So you do stand apart from people. You do think about what you want. It's going to be strange.
Staying with you, Paul, what business practices have you and your company implemented as part of managing this situation?
Wow. I mean, at the very beginning, I have to say, I don't think we got it spot on because it was like a bombshell. It just dropped. And but we've sanitizers everywhere. We've got anti-surface wipes. We've made sure our engineers have got masks, the proper PPE, gloves. Obviously, it had a dramatic effect on our business, so we've furloughed an amount of staff because it's free money. So out of 104 staff, we've furloughed 40. Precautions, we do everything. I mean, we're now looking in advance to when we may come back. So we've got people that sit in groups of 4. So we're looking at perspex screens that will go in between. We haven't got a huge canteen downstairs by any means, but it's quite nice. In the past, when it's been social and 4 or 5 will be talking over a croissant and a coffee, well, those days have gone. There's going to be a yellow sticker to say 1 person only, or a sign coming through the door to say you've got to keep 2 meters apart. So, and I think everybody will respect that. So as a business, I think ultimately, we've done what we can. We wanted to make the staff feel comfortable and supported because it's very scary. So I come in the office 1 day a week. I'm sat in my office today. I actually quite miss it, actually. I don't actually want to go back. It's quite nice to come in. But, it's a massive learning curve.
Stuart, how have you kept in touch with your colleagues and across the operation, the Stafford Collection? How have you kind of managed to keep that sort of team spirit going?
Well, we are like a family here. We have a platform, and it's a wonderful platform called Beekeeper. So we communicate on Beekeeper daily anyway, on the arrivals, VIPs, etc. So there's a lot of fun going on Beekeeper. There's a lot of Zoom calls like this. There really is a tight-knit teams across all of the collection, really. We email every week. We have a team conference call. Lots of stuff. They're doing a lot of work for the NHS as well. Even today, the team have been in to get some of the stock to take to hospitals. My 2 or 3 celebrity chefs are on Instagram cooking up ridiculous dishes every 2 minutes, and so a lot of interaction, but a lot of lessons to be learned from it. Really, I think every day is a school day, and we're all learning as we go. Michael.
Mark, we've heard there are some lovely initiatives from operators like Stuart's. How do you think operators can kind of capitalise on that and kind of that goodwill and build that trust with the public to ensure that the public is ready to return when those restrictions are lifted?
Yeah, well, there's one very recent example from the US with the big convenience food service petrol operator Wawa. Worth looking up, WAWA, Wawa. They play more in the food service side than many convenience and petrol station operators, and they've actually just launched the sanitizing SWAT squad. So it's a statement that they're making out to all of their local communities that the stores are completely trustworthy. They're making very clear, very candid, very honest communications about how often the areas will be cleaned, how they will be cleaned, how they will be looked after, why the food service areas will be trustworthy, how they will be sanitized and ready for public use. They're also making, of course, the standard 6 feet 2 meters apart statements. But they've come out with a very clear, very proactive statement. I think it's best in class of anything I've seen in food service yet from Wawa, just to reassure the local community. Talking about local community, not only Wawa, but many operators, food service operators around the world, really using this as a chance to talk about their ethics, their values, not only thinking about sustainability, not only thinking about global impact, but thinking about local community impact. Now is the time to be charitable. Now is the time to think about the local community, those in the greatest need. And what we absolutely see, a really good example of it was Pret a Manger in the UK, with I think half-price coffees or free coffees to health workers, frontline workers, etc. So that's exactly the right intent. Even in these hardest times, do the right thing for the community.
Yeah.
Be clear, communicate well, communicate clearly, and be proactive. And it's those really proactive operators, hoteliers, food service suppliers that I think will come through this the strongest, because people will remember. They will remember the good deeds that have been done.
Absolutely. Bettina, this is already an industry that I think pre-pandemic, holds sanitation as absolutely paramount to the industry. It's already an incredibly clean, hygienic industry. What else can it do to show customers that this is, to build that trust, to show that this is an industry that's taking this subject incredibly seriously? What else left is there to do?
I fully agree. The fact that we have to rebuild the trust is one of the biggest issues, because that's what we realized when there are different parts of Germany, they opened already 2 weeks ago. And the hoteliers and the restaurateurs have been so surprised because no one was coming. Everything was set up, everything was clean and tidy and welcoming, and there were no guests. I think we have to communicate about the things what we are doing, about the whole hygiene standards and so on and so forth, and that we have to ask for the personal details because we are trying to protect themselves and so on and so forth. That's all we can do. But on the other hand, the need to see something else than your own dining room is so big. They want to have another experience. And so I think it's getting better and better every day. And it does. I mean, I've seen it in different areas with clients sitting in close to Cologne, and it's getting better every week, slowly.
Thanks, Bettina. Paul, talking about the new normal, how can a manufacturer such as yours continue to service operators? How can you kind of convey that business as usual kind of message? And also, how do you maintain standards in a time like this?
Wow, where do I start? I mean, we have a business to run and we have a job to do. So people that have invested in Meiko, we should be here to support them. So we will do that, and we are doing that now. So obviously at the moment, frontline care is open, even though we've got reduced operation, because that represents a smaller part of our business. We can still provide very fast support, very accurate first-time fix, achieving all our standards, achieving all our goals, whilst working with the correct PPE in partnership with the people on site. So we've got that. That's fine. Going forward, we need to make sure that we've got things that we can offer that may be of added value, for example. So at the moment, one of the key things is there's a lot of businesses that literally just closed overnight. And you know within 8 weeks or 12 weeks' time, they're going to go to turn stuff on and it's not going to work. Or they haven't drained down the dishwasher, or they haven't cleaned the combi, or you've got a fridge full of food. I mean, that will be the case for a lot of places. So we're actually now putting in practice procedures that can help people while they're not working. So how to look after equipment when it's not on. And then we've offered hygiene packages here in advance of when they do open. So, for example, if someone has got a huge flight machine or wrap machine or even an under-counter machine, and they're not too sure when they open the door, they've left the water in, is it going to be clean? Is it going to be safe to operate? Or we can provide a service where we go in there and we can make it right with a Meiko engineer, and we can give a certificate to say it will eradicate, and they've got a blessing and they can move on. So we've also had to adapt, because I know that when people open, maybe their plan of having a £500,000 kitchen may be put to one side for a bit, because they're just going to get through it and see how best it will work, and they want to maintain the equipment. So I think people will probably want to keep their equipment working better for longer when they come back for a period of time, just to ease through it, And I think Bettina's right. We've all got an inkling, whether it's German spirit, English spirit, Spanish spirit, people want to get out and get back. Somehow we'll go back to it. We just need to work around it.
Looking at some things that possibly may change, Mark, staying on the equipment side, there's been a lot of talk about the new normal signalling the demise of the buffet or the salad bar. Do you think that's realistic? Is it probable? And if so, what alternative solutions might there be to that?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Well, let me bring an example of how Spain, hotels within Spain will be reopening. Buffet bars, salad bars absolutely will be forbidden as part of the reopening. There's no plans for that kind of human contact in terms of closeness of human contact with the food to be part of the reopening. And it's very understandable in terms of the nervousness that both staff and also hotel residents would likely feel. Now, one of the wider implications here, of course, is to dining as a whole. In fact, we would probably expect to see staggered meal times. So one potential solution that's been mooted, for example, if you think about the breakfast dining within a hotel, is that we could see residents on floor 1 having breakfast between 7 and 7:15. Residents on floor 2 having breakfast between 7:30 and 7:45. Now that takes away quite some distance from the idea of you're there, the hotel is there to serve you. We actually start moving towards much more stringent rules about when you can and cannot go into the dining room for breakfast, as an example. It's likely that as we test some of these rules, test some of these new ways of working and ways of being in close proximity to people, that we will find the right way forward in terms of relaxing the rules. Because actually, one of the biggest trends over the last few years that we've been tracking at GlobalData that we expected to be paramount for the next few years was that trend of experience. Trying new foods, trying new cuisines, being part of a movement, let's say. It could be street trucks, it could be a new global cuisine. Wagamama, as an example, has had a great experience for several years now where you sit on sharing tables in close proximity to strangers, and that's part of the experience. Now, that may need to change, and it's going to take some time for people to become more and more comfortable with that level of proximity again. And I think that extrapolates well to the idea of the salad bar, the buffet bar. So let's see where it goes. But for now, consumers most certainly will be expecting rules that help protect them, and they will be sacrificing experience to have that safety.
Which areas of this is an open question, which areas of the industry do you think look set to gain from these kind of changes? There's a lot of talk again about ghost kitchens being one of the few areas of the sector that are actually benefiting at the moment. Who wants to take that one?
We've actually set one up, Michael. We're doing a new pizza company which launches in July out of a dark kitchen in Battersea. So I do believe, that's something that we've set up. We were doing anyway to test pilot that, and I do think, as we all see today, the takeaway, the supper, the high end takeaway, the Deliveroo, all of these are doing exceptionally well from this. People like their homes have actually got to enjoy their homes more than ever before. I think because we've actually spent time in them. I think that sector is going to thrive, and that's why we've put our toe strongly into that, because we do need to divert. We all, I think, we go back to the beginning, as Mark said, and we all need to diversify. If we think by doing the same thing you're going to get the same results, we're absolutely kidding ourselves. So people say think outside the box. There is no box anymore to think out of. Just go and do what you think is best, frankly.
One of the things we're tracking at GlobalData, having just in the last couple of months set up a weekly COVID-19 tracker, globally, regionally, and across all of the main countries around the world, is consumer sentiment. So what's changing in terms of what consumers think? And one of the most interesting responses that I've seen in the last few weeks in terms of how consumers are changing their thinking is we're starting to find that pre-packaged products, so bottled beverages as an example, rather than artisan made, fresh made, in-store made, are reassuring. They're less risky. There seems to be a sentiment that consumers are finding those reassuring and safe to use. So again, we have a slight dilemma here within the food service industry where experience, as I said earlier, has been paramount. We now might be moving into a period of a little bit more of a generic positioning to really calm the nerves of the consumers.
Paul, would you like to comment on that at all?
I think the reference that we've all found a newfound love for our houses is absolutely spot on. If I go back to that, I think actually at the very beginning, when everybody panic buyed, the major retail outlets went through the roof, made millions within weeks. But I think one area of the business, maybe not my business as such, but one area of the industry, is people are starting to shop more local. So you start to think, well, I will use that little supermarket down the street, or I will use that local butcher, or I will use a restaurant. Like where I live, there's a beautiful restaurant that opened up, serving great food, and now they're doing home delivery. So they've thought outside the box. And do you know what? On Facebook, how many adverts for meat that can be delivered by top butchers, or fruit, or things? I mean, I've had some fantastic products delivered. I probably will keep using these local routes more than thinking I'm going to go down to Sainsbury's and I'm going to do my weekly shop. And I think it's going to change people's views on this. And so I think actually some of these smaller independent nice restaurants, very family oriented. They may not be top end, but they're going to actually probably benefit from this. And there might be more of a village spirit or a town spirit. And I think they could do very well out of it.
Paul, staying with you, and let's go. I'll ask all of you the same question. Just doing a spot of future gazing here. Would you care to predict what the restaurant world, the wider hospitality sector as well, will look like in, say, a year's time?
That's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, if I had the answer for that, we could make a lot of money. It's not going to be the same. But true to, as Bettina said, the human spirit has a need to interact. You have to interact. It's part of life. So the minute we can get out and about and enjoy the things that we used to do, we will do that. Albeit those places may be subtly different, but you'll adapt like we do at the moment. You know, you push a shopping trolley with a mask and gloves on and you acknowledge the person that's two meters away, or you hold your breath as you walk past. I mean, you just get used to it. You adapt. But it may adapt so much that people will expect it to stay like that, because no one will want a repeat of this. I think we will open. Yes, I think there'll be less people in a business. There'll be stricter operations. You'll expect a higher degree of cleanliness. You want to ensure that everything's clean, that you're eating off, because it's a mindset, you know.
Thank you, Paul. Mark, what are your top line predictions for hospitality in a year's time?
Yeah, I think I come back to the idea of the trends. Which were the biggest trends that we were looking at GlobalData? How were we advising our partners, retailers, manufacturers, operators within food service and hospitality? And I think there will be some impact to some of the biggest trends that we're driving growth. So we will need to adapt. So a couple of the biggest trends I've seen over the last few years, I've already mentioned the idea of experience. So the tables at Wagamama as an example, but also experience in terms of food trucks, street trucks, selling global cuisines where, okay, there's a basic level of hygiene, there's a proven level of hygiene, but you're standing pretty close in a line with your friends, your family, your colleagues, but also with strangers. You're receiving food fresh made. That the experience is the key part of this. Now, that for me will change dramatically. The likelihood of consumers to wish to go and stand shoulder to shoulder with strangers and wait for food that's fresh made from a street truck is likely to be one of the first casualties. And from there, we can extrapolate that similar experiences will be at risk. Another key element that we've seen as driving growth over the last few years that was expected to remain key was the idea of sharing. So the sharing culture. Let's say rip and tear and share pizzas, tapas in new trendy tapas bars in most cities all around the UK and into Europe and globally. That has to also be another casualty until we work out the right way to share foods together safely and hygienically in this new normal, as we've been referring to it today. Consumers will be looking for security. They'll be looking to be risk averse for some time. And so I think there will be recovery, but we have to accept that those sharing occasion experience events will decline immediately and will be some of the longest to recover. So I expect in a year's time, it looks very different in terms of how we enjoy ourselves, how we socially interact.
Thank you, Mark. And Stuart, do you think this pandemic is going to fundamentally change how we eat and drink, or do you see this as a sort of 6-month, 1-year hiatus and then returning to sort of the life we knew before?
No, I think it's changed the world, and I do believe that we are going to be as a client and as a operator, and choosing where I'm going to. Number one, we're going to look at hygiene more than anything that we've looked at before. So there's a lot of operators out there that shouldn't have been operating anyway, because they weren't clean, they weren't hygienic, and now you're going to stand at a burger van or whatever it is. You're not even going to stand next to one. So you're going to walk, if you walk down the street of a restaurant and you're going to really look, has that got 5 stars? Has that got 10 stars? And as we do in our industry, we look at the TripAdvisors and all of these things. I think you're going to look at the hygiene level.
Bettina, do you agree?
Yes, of course I do agree. I think that's part of the building up the trust which is important, and people will decide on the trust and the good feeling they do have towards the restaurant or the hotel. In terms of the restaurants, I think it's going to be a mixture of people staying in as we used to be, of course, according to the regulations. And then also people might prefer to have keeping the takeaway delivery part of it and having a picnic somewhere else, sitting outside next to the river and just apart from other people. And the third element could be a shop-in-shop system, which is just providing some kind of food which you can pick and go. And also maybe a bottle of wine, or I don't know, a picnic basket, and whatever it is. I think that's gonna be how it could look like in 1 year's time.
To end on a positive note, do you as a panel believe there's an opportunity here in this period for the whole industry to improve what we do, to reinvent the way we design, manage, operate, visit restaurants? Is there any positives to take from this period?
I think it's a mindset. I don't necessarily know that I have the right answer for that question, if I'm honest with you. There's nothing wrong with thinking that you want to go to a nice restaurant, want to stay to a nice hotel. I just think you're going to think very carefully about how you do that. And I think there is a positive message. I think if it means that the world has got to be a cleaner place, that's a good thing. There's no harm done in that. I've never washed my hands so much in my life. I've never worn gloves as much as I have in my life. And if that can fall down to other areas of the business, restaurants, hotels, schools, you name it, I think everybody wins from that.
Thank you, Paul. It was mentioned earlier, Mark, about a focus on ethics and values and local community from companies. Do you think there are positives to take from this perhaps period of reflection?
Yeah, interestingly, that's exactly where I was going to focus. So there's been an interesting initiative just in the last month by Carlsberg in the UK to find a way to support your local pub, your local cafe, your local food service establishment. So a big leading manufacturer, global brand, trying to find ways to actually still encourage trust, still encourage use of the food service industry however it can. I think what people are looking for very often is connection with their favorite cafe, connection with a hotel brand or chain or location that they feel particularly comfortable with or love to stay at because of the loyalty or the way they're communicated to or the emotions that they feel when they're there. Maybe we'd become slightly apathetic about loyalty. And I think maybe it will stimulate and force hoteliers, manufacturers, restaurant operators to think about the very best way to communicate, the very best way to connect with consumers, and the best way to drive loyalty, because I think it's due an overhaul. And I think we're looking for positives to come out of this. That could be one very significant positive.
At the Stafford, 60% of our business is repeat. And we don't have a loyalty card where you get bonus points or whatever. We just happen to know our clients' names. We happen to know what they like to drink. We happen to know what side of the bed they sleep on, so we can put the water at that side. So I think the connectivity with our clients is fundamental, that we do appreciate the feedback from Mr. Joe Baloney, and we do listen because we do want to get it right. And I think the bigger brands perceive they listen, they pretend to listen and they have these points. But I think now you're going to listen. Michael Jones comes to the Stafford. What does he really want? And now we're going to have to really deliver. So I think from this, the positivity is to respect your client and really understand and give them what they want. And there is, in our level of hotel keeping, there is no answer of no. We're in London. We can get an elephant in the courtyard tomorrow if you want one. But I think now people will appreciate that request because they need that cash and they need that repeat client. So I think so, Michael. Yeah, I think there's a positivity come out of this in such a tragic time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stuart. And Bettina, finally, do you agree with that? Do you think that there are positives to take from this period?
Yes, I totally agree with all three of you. I think as everything is getting closer, we are getting closer to ourselves as well, and we're getting closer to the next people who are standing with us, and also to those people who went through all these difficult times with us. If it's the grocery next around the corner, or if it's a restaurant who was providing us with food, or if it's our clients, whoever it is, it really touched us on a totally different level. And that changes the world from my point of view as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bettina. And on that note, we shall leave it there. Frankly, we could have done this for about 2 hours, I think. It's been a fascinating discussion. And I'd really like to thank you all, Paul, Mark, Bettina, Stuart, for taking the time, giving us the benefit of your expertise and insight. I'd like to thank Meiko for their support in sponsoring the roundtable. And thank you all for watching. Thank you.